Baby, sit down. Put the phone on Do Not Disturb. Lock the door. Because Claressa Shields just walked in front of a camera, opened her mouth, and said something so audacious, so unhinged, so hilariously delusional that the entire internet froze mid-scroll and had to rewind the clip 3 times just to make sure their ears were not playing tricks on them. Claressa Shields, the same Claressa Shields who cannot fill a mid-size arena without a whole circus of reality TV names propping up her fight card, looked into a lens, straightened her back, and told the world she sells tickets like Cardi B. Yes, Cardi B. The Cardi B with a Grammy on the shelf. The Cardi B who empties stadiums into her palm on name alone. That Cardi B. And the second Claressa Shields said it, honey, every publicist in America put their forehead on the desk. Because the numbers were about to walk in the room. And the numbers do not care about your feelings. Welcome back, sugar. The kettle is screaming, the cups are out, and the tea is not just hot today, it is scalding. Everything you are about to hear is built on publicly available information. So keep your composure and follow the receipts. Because this is not a hit piece on a champion. This is a forensic breakdown of a claim so oversized it collapsed under its own weight the moment it left her lips. Claressa Shields is undefeated. Nobody in this room is disputing that. Claressa Shields is an Olympic gold medalist, twice. Nobody is disputing that either. Claressa Shields is, on paper, one of the most decorated women's boxers in the sport's history. That record stands. That record deserves respect. But the story Claressa Shields is telling about the machine around the record? Baby, that story just fell face first into a puddle of its own math. Let me set the scene, because context is everything. Over the last several weeks, Claressa Shields has drifted further and further away from talking about her craft, the footwork, the jab, the discipline, the miles, and closer to talking about how big of a name she supposedly is. Every clip lately has been a self-coronation ceremony. Every interview has been another chance to remind the audience that she is, in her own words, the biggest thing walking. And then came the moment that broke the internet in half. Claressa Shields, looking dead serious, told a room full of cameras that she moves tickets the way Cardi B moves tickets. Sit with that. Let it marinate. Because Cardi B is a global music phenomenon whose tour dates function like national holidays. And Claressa Shields is a boxer whose recent card had to lean on Ray J, Orlando Brown, Tokyo Tony, and Big Lex just to fill the undercard. That is not the same universe. That is not even the same galaxy. Now watch this closely, because this is where the entire narrative starts to bleed. Real confidence, the kind champions actually walk in, does not need a running commentary. It does not need to keep announcing itself into every microphone that gets waved near it. The genuine greats, Serena, Ali, Jordan, Mayweather in his silent work era, they let the trophy case do the shouting. They only reached for a self-comparison when a reporter cornered them first. Claressa Shields is doing the opposite. She is bringing up her own greatness unprompted, on every platform, on every clip, on every rollout. That, baby, is not the posture of someone who is at peace with her worth. That is the posture of someone trying to convince the room before the room finishes forming the question. And when a person keeps insisting on their own importance without being asked, you have to ask why the insistence has to be that loud. Because a lion, sugar, does not tweet about being a lion. A lion just walks in the room and the room adjusts. Now sit with this for a second, because there is a real, measurable difference between a woman who knows what she is worth and a woman who has to keep reminding the audience of what she is worth. The first one does not need external validation to feel steady. The second one requires it constantly. That craving, honey, tells you more about the interior weather than any highlight reel ever could. When you have to keep telling a room how tall you are, the room is going to start measuring you. And this is the trap Claressa Shields keeps walking into with her eyes wide open. Let me be crystal clear, because I do not want anyone in the comment section twisting the tea. This is not a takedown of a confident woman. Confidence is beautiful. Confidence, when it is real, is one of the most magnetic things a person can carry. What is not beautiful, though, is confidence weaponized as a shield against every whisper of critique. When every disagreement gets rebranded as hate, when every question gets flipped into jealousy, when every pushback gets labeled as a woman being intimidated by another woman, that is not strength, baby. That is fragility wearing a leather jacket. That is insecurity in cosplay. And the closer you look at Claressa Shields' rollout right now, the more you notice the leather jacket keeps slipping. Okay, deep breath. Let us walk into the receipts, because this is where the entire conversation cracks in half. Claressa Shields said, on record, that she sells tickets like Cardi B. So let us actually do the math, because Claressa invited the math the second she made the comparison. Cardi B has headlined sold-out arena runs across dozens of cities on name alone. Cardi B sells tickets in Toronto, in London, in Dubai, in cities she has never stepped foot in before. Cardi B does not need a co-headliner to move seats. Nicki Minaj, on her Pink Friday reunion tour, packed rooms night after night on the strength of Nicki Minaj, one name on the poster, thousands in the stands. Jay-Z closed out Yankee Stadium 3 separate nights, and every seat in that stadium was purchased for one man, one voice, one presence. That is what the Cardi B comparison actually looks like when you pull it out of a soundbite and lay it on a table. Now bring Claressa Shields into that same table. Her most recent card required Ray J, Orlando Brown, Tokyo Tony, and Big Lex stacked up and down the undercard just to build a full evening of programming. 4 reality television names layered underneath her, all pulling their own segments of the audience, all lending their own eyeballs to a broadcast that could not carry itself on Claressa alone. Baby, that is not a Cardi B rollout. That is a bake sale with a boxing ring in the middle. And the moment you name-drop Cardi B, you invite the exact ledger comparison that just walked in and slapped your claim flat. Because ticket sales are not vibes. Ticket sales are numbers. Ticket sales sit in a spreadsheet, on a public record, right next to venue capacity and gate revenue. There is no PR spin strong enough to gaslight arithmetic. And the arithmetic just testified. Now let me pull the tour map even wider, sugar, because the Cardi B comparison keeps getting worse the closer you inspect it. When Cardi B mounts a run, the ticketing platforms crash. Not slow. Not glitch. Crash. Fans wait in digital queues stretching 6 figures deep for a single show. Resale markets go feral within minutes. Radio stations spin her singles into the ground for weeks leading up to a stop. Local news covers her arrival like a state visit. Meanwhile, when Claressa Shields books a fight, the promotional cycle is fighting for oxygen against 3 other combat cards on the same weekend, and the broadcaster is layering in reality television personalities to backfill the interest. Those are not competing rollouts. Those are 2 completely different economies. One is a global pop culture event. The other is a niche sporting card leaning on cross-genre curiosity to survive. And that is not an insult. That is an accurate map of the terrain. The insult is pretending the 2 are the same. Now here is another wrinkle that most people scrolling past the headline are missing entirely, so let me pull it into the light. Take a long look at where these fights actually happen. Detroit. Detroit again. Detroit some more. Home turf. Home crowd. Home city with a hometown love story wrapped around a hometown daughter. And listen, there is nothing shameful about that. Fighting at home is smart business. Every champion wants that crowd advantage, that emotional wave, that familiar roar rolling down from the rafters. Nobody in this conversation is criticizing the strategy. Smart is smart. But here is where the thread starts pulling. If you are truly the kind of pay-per-view supernova that supposedly moves tickets like Cardi B, then geography should not be doing this much of the heavy lifting. The true box office monsters of combat sports do not need one city to prove they belong. They can headline in Vegas, in London, in Riyadh, in Tokyo, in cities they have never sniffed before, and the seats still sell. Because it is not the zip code doing the pulling. It is the name on the poster. Think of the true attractions the sport has produced across the decades. Whether they were fighting in New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, Manchester, or across an ocean, the audience showed up because the audience wanted the fighter, not the local flavor. Their fans traveled. Their casual watchers bought in. The event itself became the destination because the name printed on the top of the fight poster was enough to move a crowd across time zones. That is drawing power. That is what Cardi B has. That is what Claressa Shields, respectfully, does not have. Not yet. Maybe never. And that is a whole different tea from what she is trying to pour on herself. And baby, let me hand you a receipt that people keep quietly ignoring. Look at the pay-per-view numbers. Not the hype, not the tweets, not the highlight reel replays. The actual pay-per-view buy rate. Because in combat sports, that is the closest metric you can find to a Billboard chart position. And when Claressa Shields' pay-per-view numbers land, they do not land in Cardi B territory. They do not land in Nicki Minaj territory. They land firmly inside the solid regional attraction with a loyal but modest national audience bracket. And there is no shame in that bracket. Most fighters, male or female, would kill to sit in it. But the bracket is not the top floor. The bracket is not the penthouse. And you cannot rebrand the third floor as the roof just because you have a louder microphone than everyone on the third floor with you. Now step back with me for a moment, because this is not really about one soundbite. This is not really about one clip taken out of context. This is about a pattern, a drumbeat, a slow, steady march of self-mythologizing that has been picking up speed for months. Claressa Shields owns an undefeated record most professionals would sell their left kidney to own. Claressa Shields wears Olympic gold twice over. Claressa Shields has, on merit alone, one of the most impressive resumes in modern women's boxing. And yet, the headlines around Claressa Shields keep drifting further and further from the sport she conquered. Every week, the story is a fresh new claim, a fresh new comparison, a fresh new declaration about how untouchable, unrivaled, and unassailable she is. When an athlete's public narrative starts drifting away from the athletic and toward a constant defense of ego, that is usually a signal that somewhere along the timeline, the mythology detached from the mission. And that, sugar, is where the trouble lives. Because here is the twist that nobody with a functioning pair of ears wants to say out loud. The achievements alone would have been more than enough. Nobody was asking Claressa Shields to be the loudest person in the room. Nobody was asking her to compare herself to Cardi B. Nobody was asking her to swat away every reasonable question with a wave of the hand and a rehearsed dismissal. The ring did all the talking that ever needed doing. The gold medals did all the talking. The championship belts did all the talking. Every microphone she leaned into after the fact was optional. And every one of those microphones is now stacking up as evidence in a court of public perception she volunteered to enter. Let me pull the contrast tighter, because this comparison is going to sting. The athletes who genuinely have nothing to prove are usually the quietest people in the sport. They walk into the room, they let the resume speak, and they let a sold-out venue speak louder than any comeback line ever could. They do not compare themselves to Cardi B, because if the numbers were truly in the same universe, somebody else, a promoter, a journalist, a commentator, a broadcaster, would have made the comparison for them first. Baby, when you have to be your own hype man on every podcast, every interview, every red carpet, every green room, every live stream, that is usually the loudest signal that the hype is not matching the reality on its own. The market corrects for hype. Ticket sales are the market. And the market just posted its correction. Now, before the comment section boils over, let me put something on the record. I am not sitting here saying Claressa Shields is not talented. I am not sitting here saying she has not accomplished more than most women in the sport will accomplish in 3 lifetimes. I am not sitting here saying she does not deserve respect for what she has already done. She does. She absolutely does. What I am saying, and honey, follow me carefully, is that respect is not the same thing as inflation. Respect for what a person has done is not a blanket license to accept every wild comparison that person floats about themselves. You can love a fighter and still call the tape when the tape needs calling. Both truths sit at the same table. And here is the layer that makes this whole thing genuinely fascinating, because it is not just about numbers. It is about narrative control. Claressa Shields is not simply making claims. Claressa Shields is trying to install a story into the culture. A story where she is not just a champion, but a crossover phenomenon, a household name on the level of a chart-topping rapper. That is a specific move. That is a positioning play. That is a woman trying to redraw the map of her own career in real time. And ordinarily, that would be admirable. Ambition is a good look. Ambition is beautiful. But ambition without corresponding reality creates a very particular kind of fall, and the fall is louder than the climb every single time. Look at where the audience actually is. Look at the reactions to the clip. Look at how quickly the internet turned the phrase "sells tickets like Cardi B" into a punchline within 12 hours of the words leaving her mouth. Comment sections lit up. Boxing forums lit up. Beauty shop adjacent Twitter lit up. Because everyone with a search bar can pull up gate numbers. Everyone with a calculator can compare a Detroit crowd to a global arena run. Everyone with a memory longer than a week can remember which reality TV names were needed to fill her most recent card. This claim was over the moment she said it. She just happened to be the only person in the building who did not know. Let me walk you through the psychology, because I think this is the real story underneath the tea. When a person builds their identity around never being questioned, every question starts to feel like an existential threat. Every disagreement starts to feel like an assassination attempt. Every pushback starts to feel like betrayal. So they build the fortress higher. They pull the drawbridge up faster. They surround themselves with people who only echo. And the echo chamber gets so loud that when they finally step outside of it, they say things like, "I sell tickets like Cardi B." Because inside the chamber, no one has been allowed to correct them for a very long time. That is not confidence, sugar. That is a very long fall waiting for a very short trip. Now let me lay something else at your feet, honey, because I do not want anybody in the comments accusing this breakdown of running on vibes. There is a thing called signal versus noise, and every athlete's public run eventually has to answer to it. Signal is the record. Signal is the belts. Signal is the fight tape. Signal is the trophy case. Noise is the interviews, the sound bites, the self-comparisons, the online skirmishes, the everyone who disagrees is broken moments. When an athlete's signal is strong, the noise fades into background music, an accessory, a garnish. But when the noise starts drowning out the signal, when the culture starts talking about your quotes more than your fights, you have a positioning problem. And Claressa Shields, whether she wants to hear it or not, is drifting into a positioning problem in real time. Because the noise is now louder than the signal. And when noise beats signal, the audience starts tuning to a different station. Now let us zoom back to the receipts one more time, because I promised we would keep it forensic. Cardi B's arena runs are documented. Publicly. Nicki Minaj's stadium moments are documented. Publicly. Jay-Z's Yankee Stadium residency is documented. Publicly. Beyoncé's Renaissance run essentially rewrote the ledger for what a female headliner can gross in a single calendar year. Publicly. Claressa Shields' pay-per-view numbers, her non-hometown gate performance, her undercard dependence, those are all documented too. That is why this claim collapsed so fast. The paper trail runs on both sides of the comparison, and the paper trail does not lie. And once a comparison invites a paper trail, the person who made the comparison better hope every page holds up. Here is what makes it a little sad, and I do mean sad in the caring sense. Claressa Shields did not need this. She did not need the Cardi B comparison. She did not need the, "I have a big butt, and anyone who disagrees is broken" soundbite. She did not need the endless stream of self-crowning declarations. She could have let the record breathe. She could have let the belts do the talking. She could have walked in every room like a champion who had nothing left to prove. Instead, she keeps handing critics the exact ammunition critics were waiting for. And every clip becomes another exhibit in the file. And baby, let me put a bow on something else, because it needs saying. Women's boxing itself is in the middle of a genuine renaissance right now. The sport is bigger than it was 5 years ago. The purses are bigger. The visibility is bigger. The audience is bigger. Claressa Shields, whether she wants credit for it or not, is one of the reasons for that growth. The record itself pushed the sport forward, which is exactly why this whole Cardi B moment stings. Because if Claressa Shields had simply pointed at the growth, pointed at her own contribution to that growth, and let the numbers rise organically, the culture would have carried her the rest of the way. Instead, she reached for a comparison the ledger cannot support, and now the story is not about the sport's growth. It is about the size of her claim. That is a self-inflicted wound. That is not the media doing it to her. That is a champion tripping over her own microphone. Let me stack one more receipt on the pile, because I want you to leave this video with the full picture. Look at what her interviewers try to do for her. Watch any of these press clips carefully. Notice how often the host has to bail her out of the room she just talked herself into. Notice how often a compliment gets offered mid-sentence to soften a claim that landed sideways. Notice how the segment producers cut around the moments where a fact check would have naturally happened. That is not a superstar rollout. That is a controlled environment. And a controlled environment is exactly what a Cardi B does not need, because a Cardi B walks into hostile press and comes out with a bigger fan base than she walked in with. That is what the top of the mountain looks like. That is what the comparison she reached for actually demands. and it is a demand her current rollout is nowhere close to meeting. So let me leave you with this. The truth is not that Claressa Shields is not a champion. She is. The truth is not that she has not earned her place in women's boxing history. She has. The truth is that a champion does not need to keep announcing her championship, and a superstar does not need to compare herself to Cardi B, because a superstar's numbers do that work automatically. The moment you have to reach for the comparison yourself, the comparison is already dead on arrival. The receipts, baby, walked in the room and sat down before the sentence finished forming. Now I want to hear from you, because this is exactly the kind of tea that needs a jury of the internet. Do you think Claressa Shields actually believes what she is saying, or do you think this is a rollout designed to prop up a fading pay-per-view brand? Do you think there is any world where the ticket sales claim holds up under a real audit, or is this just self-hype with a bow tied on top? Do you think Claressa Shields would sell out a single non-Detroit arena on her name alone? Right now? This quarter? No undercard help. Yes or no in the comments. And here is the one I really want you to sit with. If Claressa Shields drops another comparison next week, which name do you think she is reaching for? Nicki Minaj? Beyoncé? Rihanna? Serena Williams? Because if this pattern keeps escalating, we are going to be right back here in a few days breaking down the next one. Leave it under this video. Every comment gets read. Every take gets weighed. And if this breakdown made you nod, tap that like, subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you at the next pour. I am Stella. The tea is always hot, and the receipts never sleep.